The first time I met him, he was standing in front of the operations status wall like it was an aquarium exhibit, watching it with exaggerated reverence. He tilted his head, squinted like he was analyzing brushstrokes on a $10 million painting, and then turned to the room. "We need to turn this into a story, a compelling one. Numbers without narrative are just static." Everyone else nodded, of course. I didn't. I made a mental note. We'd just hired a showman to do a surgeon's job. He introduced himself with a handshake that felt like grabbing an undercooked noodle. "Call me Trent," he said, dragging out the name like it was trademarked. The scent of something overpriced, sandalwood maybe, clung to his suit. He wore a smile meant for sitcom pilots and LinkedIn profile photos, but it never touched his eyes. He did a quick scan of the room, marketing, sales, creative, and then landed on us. Engineering, infrastructure, the unglamorous backbone of the operation. "We'll need to do a full audit of your workflows," he said, waving a hand like he was blessing a crowd. "Efficiency is my middle name." I wanted to ask if inflated ego was his first. I'd been at the firm over 13 years. I'd built the backbone of the tech stack from scratch when we were scraping together AWS credits and treating Excel as a database. I'd onboarded 6 CTOs, outlived 4 CEOs, and mentored dozens of engineers who now worked at firms that bought our solutions. I didn't do office politics or happy hour trivia. I did systems. That work you never notice unless it breaks. Trent didn't care about that. Trent wanted optics. On day 2, he strolled through departments like the final round of a reality show. "Love the energy in here," he said to sales. "Big ideas, people. We're gonna break paradigms." When he reached our corner, the one without LED panels or beanbags, he stopped at my monitor. "And this is live network status," I said, not looking away. "Core routing overlay. Real-time load balancing for the Whoa, he interrupted, hands in the air like I'd just said a forbidden word. "You're gonna have to dumb it down for me. I don't speak Klingon." He laughed, alone. Then he pointed at the screen. "We should make this digestible, sexy even. Translate it for the wider org." I finally turned. "You're talking about infrastructure." "Exactly," he chirped, proud of himself. You know that moment when someone realizes you're not going to play along? The twitch in the smile, the micro-glare? I saw it flicker across his face. That's when I knew what I was to him. An obstacle. Not a person, not a partner, just something in the way. The issue was that Trent didn't know what he didn't know. He thought blinking lights in the server room were just for show. He thought risk reports were optional reading. He assumed cloud meant someone else's responsibility. And worst of all, he saw me as just another back-end grunt with zero leverage. That same week, he canceled our quarterly disaster recovery drill. "Come on," he said during the all-hands. "The whole system going down at once? That's like prepping for zombie attacks." I scanned the room. My team looked shell-shocked. Samir was squeezing his reusable water bottle so tightly it bent. Margot blinked like someone had just turned on a strobe light. We all thought the same thing. He was going to break something, and we'd be the ones blamed. I kept my expression neutral, nodded when appropriate, even forced a few claps when Trent ended the meeting with, "Let's disrupt mediocrity." But privately, I started checking our recovery protocols. I made backups of backups. I triple-checked access logs. Every change Trent made, even those funneled through his proxy assistants, got logged. Quietly. Methodically. Because I've seen executives like him before. They come in loud, rearrange the furniture, cut the wrong wires, and leave right before the building collapses. And when it does, they blame the engineer. So I built a fail-safe, not out of revenge, out of insurance. Because Trent? He was the reason premiums exist. At 7:12 a.m. on a Tuesday, a memo hit my inbox, time-stamped like a death certificate. Subject line: Infrastructure Streamlining Proposal. Immediate cost savings. It reeked of middle management, vague flowcharts, bar graphs with no axis labels. Phrases like low-hanging fruit and opportunity buckets. But page 2? That's where the knife slid in. Phase out secondary UPS backups in Data Wing B. Primary supply has remained uninterrupted for 3+ years. ROI not demonstrable. I stared at that sentence so long my coffee went cold. Those backups weren't nice-to-haves. They weren't feng shui plants or snack bars. They were there because 4 years ago, a squirrel nested inside a transformer relay down the street and fried half the block. Our systems stayed online because of those backups, because of the planning, because of me. Trent never asked about that story. He didn't know it. He didn't want to know it. Later that morning, during what was supposed to be a planning sync, he smiled like a man who thinks metaphors are substitutes for risk management. If the Titanic had better budget controls, he said, maybe they could have skipped all those extra lifeboats. Think of the savings. The room tittered nervously. I didn't laugh. I didn't even blink. Actually, I said, flipping a page in my notebook, the Titanic didn't have enough lifeboats. That was the problem. Exactly, he said, either ignoring the correction or missing it entirely. Different era. Modern systems don't need that kind of redundancy. We've got SLAs, mirrored disks, cloud auto-scaling. He trailed off, probably realizing he didn't actually understand how those things work together. That same week, he rejected our quarterly security audit, called it fear-based thinking. We're wasting dev cycles chasing ghost vulnerabilities, he declared. No hacker's gonna target us. We're not Netflix. Margot leaned toward me afterward and whispered, should we send out an invite to ransomware gangs? Save them the trouble? That's when I started documenting everything, not just access logs, everything. Emails where he waved off alerts, Slack threads where he brushed off concerns, budget lines he slashed without consultation, vendor accesses he approved without routing through architecture. I mirrored it all, encrypted, cold stored on a device in my desk drawer, labeled innocuously, policy reference. But in my mind, it was the Ark, because when this ship went down, and it would, someone had to survive the flood. Trent kept making changes, small ones that added up, like authorizing an update to our CI/CD pipeline that broke version locking, or removing rollback points to reduce server churn, or forwarding a phishing email to finance because it looked like a Google invoice. Each time, I cleaned up the mess, quietly, invisibly, like a janitor wiping glitter off the carpet after a parade of toddlers. Then he sent out a company-wide email. Subject: Major win. 2% infra cost reduction. He called it optimization in action. Meanwhile, our latency metrics were crawling. Support tickets were climbing. The overnight DevOps team was complaining about automation lockouts. Trent called it a permissions bug. I called it entropy. His entropy. And it was spreading. Trent's next brilliant idea? A visual modernization of the admin dashboard. Too sterile, he said. We need something with pop, animated graphs, bright colors, real flair. Samir raised an eyebrow. Do you want it to be useful, or do you want it to be cute? Why not both? Trent replied with a grin. Because it wasn't a toy. It was the control panel for a $200 million portfolio engine. That was the moment I stopped trying to change his mind. You can't argue with a peacock about architecture. You can't explain to someone who's never fixed a leaking pipe why you don't slap duct tape on a pressurized valve. You just wait for the bang, then hand them the manual they never read. That night, I reviewed the disaster protocol again. Didn't change much. Just moved one trigger, the escrow key clause. Now activated only when a senior officer overrides a redundancy without engineering consensus. Legal approved it automatically. Buried in legalese. Looked like a routine compliance update. But it meant one thing. When the ship starts sinking, I control the lifeboats. Days later, Trent scheduled a meeting. Subject: infrastructure pulse check, innocent sounding. Maybe metrics review? Maybe another one of his synergy speeches? Nope. It was a firing squad in business casual. Trent sat at the head of the conference table, sleeves rolled, coffee in one hand, smugness in the other. Around him were 3 junior engineers, 2 DevOps analysts, and Kristen from HR, the culture ambassador who smiled while filing performance flags. Let's keep this casual, Trent began, flipping through a folder with my name on it. Just a touch base. What's working? What's legacy? That kind of thing. I didn't sit, just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. He began with the theater, compliments on past migrations, shallow praise for uptime. Then came the pivot. But, he said, dragging the word like taffy, I've heard we may be over-allocating resources, clinging to old habits, maybe being too cautious. He looked at me like we were sharing an inside joke. We weren't. Mel, he said, you've been here what? Over a decade? 13 years, I replied flatly. 4 CTOs, 6 audit frameworks, 2 full data center relocations, 0 critical outages. He gave a slow, sarcastic nod. Impressive, really. But sometimes that kind of tenure can breed rigidity, resistance to change. He smiled at the juniors like he was trying to plant a seed of doubt. Then he pulled the pin. For example, he said, we're still running our own private certificate authority internally. Isn't that a bit retro? It's also the reason your system hasn't been hijacked by a 12-year-old with a shell script, I said. The room went still. Kristen shifted in her seat. Jacob, one of the juniors, stared at his laptop like it had betrayed him. Trent chuckled. See? Passion. I love it. Then came the real knife. But when I reviewed your salary, he paused for effect. Well, it raised some eyebrows, especially when compared to output. There it was, the story he was building. Too expensive, too old, too stubborn. I glanced at the folder in his hand. Thin, printouts from HR. Budget spreadsheets with red marks. He hadn't read my reports, not the audit logs, not the escalation maps. He wasn't assessing performance. He was building narrative cover for a cut. I walked out before he finished. No slammed door, no scene, just silence. At my desk, I opened my secure vault drive. Inside was a document buried in an old SOC2 renewal, an obscure clause about authorization escrow in case of technical reorgs or role reassignment. With one click, I triggered it. Fail-safe mode. Access shifted. Root key custody moved into legal escrow. 12 seconds. No pop-ups, no alarms. Just a system event tagged as a maintenance task. Then, I sent one email to legal. Subject: policy activation. Custody transfer. No message, no signature. They replied 8 minutes later. Received and acknowledged. Secure escrow engaged. Custody chain recorded. I stared at that line like it was oxygen. No revenge, just control. And when the system broke, and it would, they'd learn what happens when the only person who knows where the switches are walks away. The next morning, Trent made a joke. Not a clever one, not even a cruel one, just stupid. We were in the main data center. Cold tile floors, racks humming with quiet precision. The smell of ozone and dust in climate-controlled air. The room where silence was sacred and uptime was gospel. He stood in front of the primary server rack, my rack, gesturing like a tourist on a factory tour. All this just to look pretty? He quipped, grinning. My daughter's nightlight glows more impressively. I was sitting 10 feet away, laptop on my knees, monitoring diagnostics, watching packets flow like blood through a system I had built line by line, node by node. I looked up, just once. Not at him, at the rack. 4 years of modular build-outs, failover nodes I'd fine-tuned to avoid latency drift. Scripts designed to run invisibly, silently, until they needed to roar. And here was this clown, comparing it to a $14 plastic toy from Target. He didn't notice the silence that followed. Not just awkward, dead. Margot's fingers froze over her keyboard. Jacob's chair creaked as he slowly stopped spinning. Samir looked down at the floor like maybe it would open and swallow the moment whole. Trent kept talking, something about aesthetics and confidence, and how tech should inspire belief. No one responded. I didn't speak, just closed my laptop, quietly. No drama, no snap, just the soft click of the lid latching shut, like a gun's safety being turned off. I stood, slid my badge into my coat pocket. He looked up, cheerful. Heading to lunch? Lunch, I replied. And after that, we'll see. He smiled, thinking he'd scored a point, thinking the room would now relax. Then he turned to the others, oblivious. All right, let's talk about decommissioning the second node bank. If we can power that down. Margot cut in, her voice strained. That's a mirrored cluster. It's not cosmetic. It's okay, Trent said. We'll simplify. Lean is clean, right? He had no idea what he'd just done, but everyone else in that room did, because I wasn't going to stop him anymore. I walked out of the server room without another word, past Kristen from HR, who gave me a weak smile and pretended not to notice the resignation form she knew I hadn't filed yet, walked through the corridor past the intern, awkwardly standing by the vending machine with a folder no one had asked for, kept walking until the hum of machines faded into bureaucratic airspace. I didn't look back, didn't need to. When I closed that laptop, I didn't just pause a diagnostic run. I enacted the final trigger in a long-laid cascade. Not sabotage, not revenge, just physics. Because when you remove the architect from a system built to require human judgment, you get decay. And decay has a timer. The heartbeat tokens would start failing, quietly, gracefully. Orchestration would miss its cues. Expiration policies would begin to erode. And thanks to Trent's brilliant cost savings, the backup nodes that might have caught the fall, already gone. Nothing explosive, no immediate collapse, just entropy. Slow, merciless, undeniable. Because he thought guardrails were speed bumps. He didn't know he'd already unscrewed the bolts from the roller coaster. He just hadn't noticed that gravity was patient. I didn't hand in a 2-week notice. Didn't write some syrupy goodbye on LinkedIn with words like growth and gratitude. That's not how you exit a war zone. That's how you get shot in the back. Instead, I printed one page, signed it, and walked it down to legal. Clause 12B, voluntary separation triggered by hostile reassignment or public undermining of critical technical role. It wasn't new. I'd added it 3 years ago during a compliance rewrite. Nobody noticed. Nobody but me, and the firm's general counsel, who approved it. It meant one thing. The moment someone in executive leadership publicly humiliated or dismissed my technical authority, I could resign immediately. Void my non-compete trigger protective severance, and most importantly, seal off administrative access to certain recovery tokens without violating a single internal policy. That nightlight joke? That was the trigger, the spectacle, the insult framed as banter. Legal didn't argue. They read the clause, stamped the paper, and handed me a copy with a tight-lipped nod. I walked back to my desk with no fanfare. Just a laptop bag, a vault drive, and the quiet weight of a 13-year contingency map sliding into place. I wasn't a saboteur. I was an engineer. And what I did next? It was far more elegant, and far more irreversible. Back at my terminal, I tapped into the orchestration layer. I revoked a single token, just one. It wasn't even a credential in the usual sense. It was a heartbeat verification key, an internal checker that quietly pulsed every 5 minutes like a whisper. Yes, the system is still intact. Without it, things didn't break. Not immediately. They just forgot how to breathe. Slowly. The services were built with grace periods, failover assumptions, redundancies, all fine until someone turned those off. Someone like Trent. And I'd documented it. 17 hours later, Samir would see the first anomaly. A database sync on the east node that retried, then failed silently. Normally, orchestration would catch it, reschedule, reassign, heal. But the orchestrator? It was blind now. 3 minutes after that, a routine certificate expired. It should have auto-renewed, but the renewal required a ping from a service that was now disqualified thanks to my revoked token. The cert failed. Traffic started to die. No big alarms. Just little red X's in terminal windows most people didn't check. Another 5 minutes. Orchestration started pulling in recovery routines based on cached values that had already expired. The dominoes began to fall. Public dashboards stopped updating. The mobile apps started throwing 503s. Transactions queued up, delayed by 4 seconds, then 6, then 11. Customer support pinged Slack. Hey, is the client portal down? Getting weird errors? Margot responded, looking into it. Samir chimed in. Seeing stale sessions. Routing table looks off. Then Jacob posted the big one. This shouldn't even be possible. What's going on with orchestration? Then came silence. Not because they didn't care, because they realized they weren't dealing with a bug. They were watching a system decay. Perfectly. Surgically. Trent had disabled every redundant failover. Called it bloat. And now, the room where he'd cracked nightlight jokes? It was going to fill with the glow of dashboards blinking red. By the time the support center lit up like a Christmas tree, I was sitting in a quiet coffee shop across town. Window seat, oat milk latte. Calm sunlight stretching across the table. My laptop was closed. I didn't need it. The barista called out someone's matcha order when my phone buzzed. 3 missed calls. All internal. No voicemails. Just silent urgency. I ignored them. The emails started next. Kristen from HR. Are you available? Samir. Urgent system issue. Please respond. Margot. Please help. Attaching logs. I opened Margot's message. The logs were clean, smart. She'd already traced the problem. The orchestration layer was locked out of the recovery daemon. But she didn't know why. She couldn't. That part wasn't documented. Too sensitive. Too powerful. At minute 15, the CTO entered the Slack thread. Looping in ops and legal. Triage in progress. Status meeting in 10. Trent? Still silent, probably trying to figure out which buzzword would make the blinking stop. I sipped my coffee and watched system load graphs, normally smooth as silk, start to look like seismic activity. The queues were backing up fast. 30 seconds, then a minute, then 3. The financial back end was grinding down. Somewhere in the marketing department, someone had probably hit refresh 5 times on the client dashboard and thought it was their Wi-Fi. And then, I wondered, had they found the note yet? I left one. Not bitter, not melodramatic, just a post-it. Yellow. Stuck to the back of my monitor. In neat block letters. Restore key is in escrow with counsel upon written release by the board. I could see it now. Trent standing there, reading it, blinking. His heartbeat ticked up. The CEO turning to him, slow. deliberate. Because here's the thing they never taught in his MBA program. Power is easy to claim when nothing's going wrong. But when the lights go out, people remember who knows where the switches are. 19 minutes after the first flicker, internal support escalated the incident to level 1. Legal was now fully looped in. A board meeting invite landed in my inbox. Emergency session, 15 minutes. I closed the laptop, not out of spite, just protocol. I looked out the window again. The sun was bright. The coffee was warm. The world hadn't ended, just their illusion of control. Back in the office, the war room was chaos. The CEO burst in, breathless, still in gym clothes, gripping a half-empty water bottle and his buzzing phone. "Where the hell is Melanie?" he barked. Nobody answered. The CTO's glasses were fogged. His shirt half untucked. He was rifling through a printed copy of our infrastructure map like it would magically explain everything. "Why is no one answering me?" the CEO shouted again. Trent stood slowly. "She left. Resigned." "When?" the CEO blinked. "Yesterday? I think maybe this morning." "You think?" the CEO snapped. Kristen stepped forward with her tablet. She filed a Clause 12B voluntary separation, triggered by public undermining. The CEO stared. "Clause what?" "She added it 3 years ago, during a compliance cycle. Legal approved it." "I didn't approve that." "She didn't need your approval," Kristen replied. "It was approved by General Counsel. It activates when a qualifying event occurs." "And what the hell is a qualifying event?" the CTO asked. Kristen hesitated. "Public diminishment of technical authority or reassignment that results in disruption of autonomy." Everyone looked at Trent. Trent opened his mouth, then closed it again. The CEO turned toward legal. "Fine, she left. We need access to recovery. Now." Legal's voice came through speakerphone, clipped and professional. "The decryption token for root service config was transferred into legal escrow this morning, per Clause 12B. Access requires a majority board vote and formal written requests citing breach or critical need." The CEO blinked. "I can't get access?" "Correct," came the reply. "The custody chain is sealed. Unseal it." "I can't," legal said firmly. "Only the board can, in session." The CEO stepped away from the table, pressing both palms into the wall like he could squeeze a solution from drywall. The CTO muttered, almost to himself, "She built this like a bunker." Because that's exactly what it was. Melanie didn't sabotage anything. She just removed herself from the system and left no one behind who could fake her fingerprint. The multi-factor key wasn't a USB stick. It was a dynamically generated hash from 5 service maps, 2 of which only she had stored in a private, decentralized mind palace. When she left, the system didn't break. It just forgot how to hold itself together. Trent sat motionless. The CTO turned to him, his voice ice. "You killed the failsafes." "No," Trent whispered. "I streamlined. She was too cautious. She over-engineered everything. You removed the lifeboats," the CTO snapped, "because the ship hadn't sunk yet." "This is sabotage," Trent insisted. "No," Kristen said. "This is policy. You signed off on it," legal added without emotion. Clause 12B was implemented following a compliance review flagging Melanie's architecture as high criticality with no succession plan. The clause was approved unanimously. The CEO closed his eyes. Of course, Melanie had seen this coming, not just any disaster, but this one. She hadn't guessed that someone like Trent would arrive. She architected for it, left them rope, and watched the fool hang himself. "Board session is in 45 minutes, legal said. We'll need a formal motion to release the recovery key. The CEO didn't look up. Draft it. Trent tried again. Listen, I didn't mean, don't speak, the CEO said. Not a shout, just steel. The temperature in the room shifted. Trent was no longer the new blood. He was the infection, and they were going to cut him out. You could see it in how the CTO leaned back, arms crossed, suddenly distant. How Kristen stopped typing notes. How Margot wouldn't even look at him. You tried to get her out, the CTO said flatly. You called the servers decorative? She warned you, Jacob muttered. She wrote the memos. She filed the risks. You laughed. That's when Trent realized there would be no defense. No PowerPoint, no scapegoat. He was the scapegoat. The CEO straightened his jacket. Send the vote to the board, he said. Prepare a termination packet for Trent, effective immediately. He didn't even glance back. And don't say another word. You've said enough. Screens flickered again, another service down. The war room scrambled, but underneath the flurry, there was a new energy. The weight of realization. This wasn't a fire. This was the fire alarm going off, and nobody knowing where the exit was. Miles away, at gate 14, Melanie was folding her boarding pass the way she always did, edge to edge, creased just once. A ritual for letting go. Her phone rang. She didn't check the name, just saw a New York area code and a corporate prefix she recognized. She answered. Melanie? The voice said. Warm, efficient. We've been watching. A pause. We read your logs, the audit trails, the kill switch policies. That's not just engineering. That's discipline. Another pause, as if to be sure she was still listening. We want that here. No interview, no test. The work speaks for itself. Full CTO role. Autonomy guaranteed. Melanie leaned back in the hard plastic chair, watching children chase each other and luggage roll like ants through linoleum corridors. No offer, Doc? We'll send one, the voice replied. But Mel, don't build it for us. A pause. Build it if we deserve it. She ended the call without saying goodbye. Back in the boardroom, they passed around the post-it like it was radioactive. Legal confirmed its handwriting. The CTO didn't even open her final report, just pointed at the first page. Escalation lockout scenario. Dated, signed, sent to Trent's inbox. The CEO stared at it like it was a tombstone. Then he spoke, quiet, final. Get out. Trent rose slowly. No speech. Just the soft shuffle of shame against an overpriced blazer. He turned once, hoping someone would defend him. No one did. The board turned to the CEO. I want her back, he said. She's not coming back, the CTO replied. We'll pay whatever she asks. At 34,000 feet in the air, Melanie opened her phone one last time before switching it off. One message, no greeting, just 5 words. We'll pay whatever you ask. She stared at it, unreadable. Then she powered the phone off and let the clouds carry her somewhere else.